Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Michael Wilson, and I'm the webinar producer for KardasLarson. Today's session is Enhancing Trust in HR. It's about the people and the business. We'll spend the next 30 minutes exploring how HR can become a trusted advisor to both the leadership team and employees. Now for a few housekeeping notes. Everyone on the line is muted by default. Please download the presentation and respond to the polls when you're prompted to. You can utilize the question box to interact with the presenters during the course of this webinar. Please follow KardasLarson on LinkedIn and Twitter to check out our new website to watch previous KardasLarson webinars. And we value your feedback. Please take the survey that you receive after the webinar. Your email will contain a recording of this session. Now let's meet your presenters. Lisa Schipani and Lois Krause have spent many years helping organizations of all types and sizes to successfully develop and grow both their people and their businesses. Lois has special expertise in labor law management, while Lisa's proficiency is in leveraging employee performance and development. Both of your presenters are committed to helping you maximize performance. Now I'll turn it over to Lisa to begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lois and I are pleased to have you with us this afternoon, and we look forward to talking about building trust in the HR organization. So some of the things we're going to cover is what is trust and why is it critical to your success, and that delicate balance that we all play between our employees and the business and trying to satisfy everyone's needs. And we'll talk about some best practices that we have for enhancing trust, and we're also curious to learn about your best practices as well. So to get started, Lois and I would like to have a sense of the size of the HR teams that we have on the webinar today. So take a moment and choose. Are you a department of 1? Do you have 5 members? Is your team 5 to 10 members? Or do you have greater than 10 members on your HR team? Okay, it looks like we have 100% of you being a department of 1. And that means that it's your role to build trust within your organization around what you do from an HR perspective. Really, size doesn't matter. The leadership team in the organization views you as advocating the business first, and your employees view you as advocating for them first. So there's that whole balance piece there, which can be very tricky as an HR leader. Leading an HR team also requires focus and building, as we mentioned, building trust in the organization. So now let's talk about what exactly do we mean by trust. So Michael? Okay, so this definition comes from dictionary.com, and it is trust is the firm belief in reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Let's take a minute and deconstruct this particular definition. When you think about reliability, I always encourage my HR leaders to think about roughly right versus perfection. Sometimes when we are so focused on perfection, we are not reliable. We may say that we're going to do something, and because we're trying to make it perfect, we don't get it done on time, and we're viewed as unreliable. If we look at truth, I always like to encourage people to focus on the good, the bad, and the ugly, whether you're talking to your leadership team or employees, covering all areas and reviewing the good things, what's really bad, and the totally ugly will help you be a trusted advisor. If we focus on ability, sometimes you're taking on stretch assignments or you may not know the answer to something. It's okay to say, I don't know that answer, or it's okay to take on a challenge that maybe you're not too familiar with, and do what I would call fake it till you make it. So let people know that you are working on it, that you are going to get back to them and keep them informed, and then you can go back to your office and figure out how you're going to conquer this problem. And finally, if we look at strength, as an HR leader, and particularly a department of one, you really need to be able to challenge the status quo, whether it's with your owner or an employee, but really feel comfortable that you have that strength to do so. So Lois is going to take us through some statistics about trust in the HR world.
Thank you, Lisa. So, what do your employees think? In a 2012 survey conducted by CareerBliss.com, we found these statistics. 72% see HR as aligned with management. 21% think HR supports what is right, and 7% think that HR looks out for the employees. We know that everyone in HR walks a fine line all the time. We must be friendly, not friends. We need to let everyone know we will be there for them and support them, both on the employee side and the business management side. Sometimes it is good to remind employees that they too work for the company, and they need to keep the business needs in mind as well. That can sometimes soften what they may feel is a hard line. We all know that it takes time to build trust in both personal and business relationships. I worked with an organization once where the president had always required the HR person to tell him everything, and as a result, no one trusted HR. I had to tell him that there are some things he could not know, and if he expected people to come to HR for guidance, he needed to change his thinking. He was not very happy at first. However, as he saw confidences being kept when it involved something that did not have to be revealed to him, and how everyone started to feel more comfortable with HR and their individual managers, he realized that he didn't need to hear about everything. People started to work together and trust each other. When serious things occurred, like sexual harassment complaints, that really needed to be shared, people came to discuss them with HR, and HR would then explain that the confidence could not be kept in that instance, and the organization grew and prospered. Whether your HR function is enjoying high levels of trust or working to enhance trust, we should all keep these numbers in mind and keep our ears to the ground. Now, integrity. Integrity is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. Let your integrity be one of your guiding principles or values in whatever you do within all of your relationships with employees. Owners, leadership, etc. Sometimes you can put what you think is your future in jeopardy because you stand up to a leader or an owner by saying you cannot share something with them. Realize that once they understand what you are trying to do and why you need to do it to demonstrate the utmost integrity, they will begin to feel differently about it. Treat all in the same manner. Everyone matters. Remember that. Now, before we dive into the best practices, keep in mind that investing in respect will help to spread trust throughout your organization. Start with the basics of connecting with people on a personal level. Remember names, interests, and contributions, and keep in mind that everyone wants to feel important. I'm in the process of rereading How to Win Friends and Influence People. And 79 years later, the tenets that Dale Carnegie laid out resonate today. Yes, it was 1937 when that first came out. Now, let me turn it back over to Lisa for some best practices. Lisa?
Thank you, Lois. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about some best practices that Lois and I have gathered over our years in corporate America as well as consulting. And then later on in the webinar, we're going to ask you to share some of yours. So let's start with study the business. It's very important that you learn the business, that you learn, if you're a manufacturer, the product that is made, how it is made, who are your customers. It's critical to understand the business. And then we're going to talk about, Lois is going to take us through a concept called yes and how you balance employees, leaders, and owners and listen effectively with all of them. She's then going to talk about asking for feedback. And for those of you who have been on our webinars a number of times, you know that we are very big on asking for feedback. That tends to be a theme in everything we talk about. Then there's the piece on sharing your strategy. I'll talk a little bit with you about ensuring that all your employees know what the HR strategy is. And then what I call say what you do and do what you say, or I also refer to it as walking the talk. And you need to really keep that in mind as you're working with your employees as well. And I was reminded of this yesterday when I had asked my son to pick up some strawberries for me. He told me that he would, and then when I came home last night, there were no strawberries to be found. He clearly forgot that he had made that commitment to me. So let's move on, Michael, and talk about studying the business. So as I briefly mentioned, it's critical that you learn how the business works, whether you are customer-facing, whether you create a product, whether you're a professional services firm, really taking the time to learn how it works. Now, all of you are departments of one, and I'm quite sure that you are invested in the business and how it works. When you start to add members to the HR team, you want to ensure that as part of their onboarding, that they really understand how the business works as well. The next theme is make money and save money. So as a part of understanding and studying the business, you want to know how the organization makes money and what you can do to add value to making money. So if it's a product-driven environment where you are selling your product, ensuring that you have top talent in the sales arena will help you to build trust in the organization. On the flip side, there's the saving money. And there's a lot of ways that you can save money by maybe having a strong safety program to avoid injuries. Also, in terms of understanding cost-neutral benefits, employees enjoy having a variety of benefits, and there certainly are some out there that are cost-neutral. So focus on figuring out how you can add value and make more money for the organization as well as saving money. The other piece of this is reducing risks. Help your leaders and your owners understand risk. So they may want to do something that as an HR leader you're not in agreement with. So you may say something like, you can do it that way, and here's the risk that I see with doing it that way. So that you're being supportive of the way the leader wants to do something and also showing them that there is a risk involved. So Lois is going to take us through our next concept called yes and.
Thanks, Lisa. Make sure you and your team are available to the leadership and the employees alike. Everyone should feel important and listened to. And listen without judgment. Say yes and rather than yes but. Everyone knows when you say but, they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. That will stifle any type of discussion. So you just say yes and. And that will let them know that you are listening. And it will make them feel comfortable enough to continue what they walked up to you to talk about. They start, and you say yes, and that just leaves it open, the door open for them to walk in. Also, say it with a smile. It goes a long way and invites further discussion and feedback. Now, asking for feedback. Creating an environment of trust involves sharing information about your strategy and activities and asking for employee input and feedback. HR is responsible for creating and implementing policy and procedure in the organization, especially most of you that are listening today that are HR departments of one. Consider involving your employees and asking for input during the development phase and feedback during the policy review process. Yes, this takes longer, and you may get some ideas that you can't live with. But you'd be surprised how often you get feedback that is actually good and some ideas that you never thought of. You'll also be surprised that some employees can give you the answer you've been looking for. So then once you get all the feedback, you need to act upon the feedback that you receive, even if it's to say that you're not able to integrate the suggestion. And if that happens, don't forget the why, because what happens with soliciting information from people, if you can't get back to them and you can't implement what they suggested, if you don't tell them why and you just ignore what they gave you, they will never come back and give you feedback again. So explain the reason for your chosen strategies and always give them the why.
So we talked about a little bit earlier in the introduction of the best practices, sharing your strategy. So I'm imagining that while you're a department of one, you still have particular strategies that you're working on. You may have developed those strategies with the leaders in the organization or the owner of the business, and it's your role to go out and execute what I would call the people strategies. So ensuring that your employees know that you work what you're working on will help them understand and explain to them the why you've chosen these particular strategies. As we all know, adults like to understand why. So the more you can include that, the more you will build trust in your organization. And ask for help in shaping some of the things that you're doing. You may have been asked to put together a particular policy, and yes, you need to define the policy, but are there elements that your employees can help shape? Look for ways to involve your employees in the shaping of policies and programs and procedures. And as I mentioned, include the why. If a classic example is many times from a benefits perspective, we need to move to a higher deductible, or we need to move to a higher co-payment because our benefit costs are so very high, and instead of increasing a weekly contribution to benefits, we make plan design changes. Communicating that to your employees, and if you actually have the opportunity to help to employees to help shape some of those decisions, take the time to do that, because again, it helps to build trust and it helps people to feel engaged and a part of the decision making. So now we'll move on to say what you do and do what you say. And Lois alluded to this a little bit as well. So again, you're walking that fine line of being an advocate for your employees as well as an advocate for the business. And there are times when you may not be able to keep something confidential. You need to explain to the employee why you can't keep something confidential. If you tell them that you are going to keep something confidential, you must keep your promises and do that. You may also be faced with leaders who feel as though they need to know everything. And as Lois mentioned, you need to be able to push back and say to them, this is what you need to know. I cannot tell you any more information, and this is why. And again, if you commit to your employee that you're not going to tell a particular leader something, you need to keep that confidential, and you need to keep that promise. Also, as an HR leader, when you're put in these positions of determining whether you can keep something confidential or not, you really need to consider the impact on the employee or the business. Is it something that could harm the business if you don't tell the leadership team? And that would be important to let your employees know that you feel that you must share this information because it's putting the business at risk. And again, letting the employee know why you feel it's putting the business at risk. So now we'll move on and get some input from you. Lois, we're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Okay. We would like all the participants to share their most successful best practice. Now, if you could please go into the question box on your side panel and share your most successful best practice with us. Just go in there and then write it down as if you were asking a question, but just take about 90 seconds or so. We'll leave it open so that you can write down your best practice for creating trust. And then we'll share the best practices from all with everyone. Okay, one here that I see, and one person wrote that they like to spend time outside of work getting to know employees more. That's a very good way of, you have to build up the relationships, and that's very, very good. Just keep in mind that HR should always be friendly, but not necessarily be friends. But I think that's a great idea to have something organized outside of work to get to know people more. Excellent. And it seems here that one person says that as a department of one, they walk the floor every day and just say good morning or good afternoon whenever they have a chance to do it. But they make it a point to walk the floor every day and go, talk to people and say hi, how are you, and it just to get their face out there. That's an excellent, excellent practice. And okay, and then somebody else said that they like to learn not just the employees' names, but try to know like names of their kids or spouses or boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever, and just to ask how's this one, how's that one. It helps to develop that relationship. Okay, there's somebody else here that says we haven't thought of any strategic practices to create trust, but I think we've used transparency and open communication to create a a sense of trust. So far, for example, they're open with how we arrive at compensation packages and our compensation philosophy. That's absolutely excellent. As Lisa mentioned earlier, sharing your strategies and being transparent, which we've always said in all of our webinars about the transparency. So this is an excellent, excellent best practice. Unless we have somebody else, I don't see any others. But thank you very much for sharing, and I hope others of you got some good suggestions for best practices. So now, in conclusion, there are just a few ideas here to help you build trust in your organization. And asking for feedback from your leadership team and other stakeholders will go a long way in helping you identify your strengths and opportunities. And remember, the employees are stakeholders too. Trust equals integrity and respect. Thinking about making money and saving money. Practice the two-way communication. Say what you do and do what you say. And most importantly, listen to everyone. Now, Michael, do you have any questions from our participants that we can answer? We have a few minutes here. We can take...
Sure. I'll start with this one that came in. My president expects me to tell him everything I hear from employees. How do you explain that you can't do that?
Sometimes that's a very difficult decision. And a difficult discussion to have. But you really need to explain to him that if he learned about everything and everybody knew that if they came to the HR person and told them things in confidence, that you were going to go, that the HR person was going to go directly back to the president, people will never tell you anything, and there was no way that HR can keep the organization out of risk. You have to kind of tie it to what's in it for me kind of thing. Explain to him that, you knowing this creates this this barrier between myself and, HR and the employees. So, and explain to him that you will never have any information for him and it's going to just shut things down.
Okay. Lisa, I think this is one for one of your slides, which was, what would you say to somebody who doesn't feel they're in a position to help the company make and save money?
That's a tough one. I think that we all are in a position to help an organization make and save money, and I think sometimes we have to dig deep to figure out what our contribution could be. And also, if you're feeling that way, I would ask for some feedback in terms of, and maybe it's more in terms of how can I add value to this organization, or how can I contribute to the profitability of the organization? And I would not be afraid to ask leaders that question so that together how you can add that value. But I truly believe that everyone can add value, which leads to making and saving money in the organization. It may not be a direct correlation, but it certainly will have an indirect correlation.
And Lisa, our last question that we have time for, how do I get to know the business if I'm kept out of leadership discussions?
Another tough one, and certainly can be a common one, particularly if you have not established yourself and built that reputation and rapport with the leadership team. And again, I would encourage you to let the leadership team or the owners know you want to learn more about the business, you want to add value, and the only way that you're able to do that is for them to share things with you. All
right, well, thank you both, Lisa and Lois. And thank all of you for attending this KardasLarson webinar. We encourage you to follow KardasLarson on LinkedIn and Twitter to receive information on future webinars, compliance updates, and our speaking engagements. Please be on the lookout for an email later with a survey and a recording of this presentation. Also, download this presentation, a PDF, in the handout section if you haven't had a chance to yet. And we are now signing off. Thank you.